parts of outback Queensland have been hit by record-breaking rain this week, leading to widespread significant flooding in towns like Winton, Quilpie and Stonehenge. More rain has fallen overnight as the system heads south towards the coast, with the worst expected to hit Brisbane and the Gold Coast and Sydney around Saturday. For the latest, we're joined live in Winton by Queensland Premier David Crisafulli. David, just before we get into the flooding, I've got to ask you about the federal election being called today, 3rd of May it looks like. What does that look like for Queensland and your campaigning? Because obviously a lot of Olympic infrastructure funding coming from the federals leading into this election.
Yeah, well, that's obviously important, as is the Bruce Highway funding and all of the other things we need to do. Now, we've spoken to both sides of politics about what that looks like, and obviously election campaigns always put up challenges and opportunities for people to vote. What we need to do is make sure that the disaster assistance we need for communities continues to flow. I've spoken to both sides of politics about that, and I've got every faith that it will.
Premier, Queenslanders are tough buggers, aren't they? They really are, but they're being inundated constantly at the moment, experiencing its wettest March in more than 142 years at the moment. Where you are in Winton, you can see the water. What's the situation like there?
Yeah, Matt, they're not out of the woods yet. Some of the rain systems look like it will continue, certainly into the weekend, and the likelihood of that you've got big river systems where the water flows through. So there are communities that could be experiencing flooding today, tomorrow, and even indeed a couple of days' time. So our eyes at the moment are focused on a little community called Junda, where it's likely that it's going to top the 1974 levels. That's over 50 years, and that was the big flood that community talks about. So, yep, we've got emergency services in place if evacuations need to occur. We did have to evacuate the little town of Adavale yesterday. We've got all 27 people out safe and well there at Quilpie at the moment. I hope to get to see them in a couple of hours. Yeah, look, so at the moment, it's about people, and then long term, it'll be how can we flick the switch and make sure that those people on the land who are going to suffer really significant livestock losses, how can we support them in their hour of need as well?
Yeah, we're just keeping our eye as well, Premier, on Yarralumla there, as the PM looks like he's going to make his way out of the doors of Government House, just meeting with Sam Mostyn to dissolve Parliament. There he is right there. The Prime Minister just had that discussion with the Governor and signed the forms, the appropriate documents that needed to be signed, and we'll head back now to Parliament House and we'll hold a press conference and we'll know a lot more about what's going to happen and particularly when we're going to head to polls for that federal election. So a big day there in Canberra at the moment. Back to you, Premier. I've got to ask you about Quilpie, because interesting to read that the Mayor has slammed the Bureau of Meteorology for not having a weather radar between Alice Springs and Charleville. Is that something you're going to look into?
He's right, and he's not the only mayor who's saying it. Across the board, they're saying it. So, look, we've raised that with the Bureau, we've raised that federally, and we will continue to do it. We also need, at a state level, we need to make sure that we put more river gauges, because often the water that flows, it can take a couple of days. So, for example, the little community of Thargomindah, their water won't start flowing through their catchment for a few days. If you know how much has fallen, that gives them time to plan. But on that criticism about the radar, they are 100% spot on, 100%. You can't have such a broad part of the state at the mercy of Mother Nature without giving them some kind of warning. So, no, we're backing the mayors really hard in that push, and I can tell you we will not leave that go. That is something that the feds need to step up on.
Premier, I was going to say it was a bit of a quiet time for you as the feds start campaigning around Australia, but it looks like you have got your hands full and are very busy. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good on you, Matt. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.